This book, our Constitution, protects our society and empowers us to govern. The Protea leaves are us, the people, who freely elect our voices in Parliament. The drum calls the people of Parliament, through whom we govern together. And the sun is our country, healing our past, improving our lives, and energizing our potential. Together, our Constitution, our people, our Parliament, and our country are building our great South African nation. Parliament TV, channel 408 on DSTV.
Alrighty.
My name is Mzwandile Masina. I'm the member of the African National Congress. I sit in the National Executive Committee. I come from Katlehong in Ekurhuleni in Gauteng province. I'm a master's graduate from University of the Free State, having served in the 5th Parliament, and then I'm now returning, and I left and became the executive mayor of the city of Ekurhuleni. I am passionate about politics and as well as reading and writing. I'm an author, and I've authored a book about the future realities of the coalition. And then I gave the case about Ekurhuleni, and I guess we are now in that future.
Dumelang, and welcome to Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408 and Parliament's YouTube channel, coming to you live from our studios on the Parliamentary Precinct. Now remember to join the conversation on our social media platforms using the handle @ParliamentofRSA and let us know what you think. Libito laka ke Tshepo Mori, and today we delve into two critical economic developments that sit at the heart of South Africa's industrial future and its role on the African continent. Our focus is on trade, industry, and the urgent quest for inclusive growth. Now, on one hand, we have a cornerstone domestic industry, the automotive sector, at a pivotal crossroads. Now, the ambitious Automotive Master Plan 2035 was launched with the promise of doubling employment, deepening local manufacturing, and transforming ownership. Yet, recent engagements in Parliament reveal a worrying gap between aspiration and reality. Production may have bounced back, but local content is stagnant. Cheaper imports are undercutting local assemblers, and the seismic global shift to electrical vehicles looms large. Now, the call from stakeholders has been clear. The policy framework needs urgent review to genuinely support localization, job creation, and meaningful economic transformation. Now, on the other hand, we have a significant international stride. Just recently, President Ramaphosa signed the instrument that makes South Africa a full sovereign member of the African Export-Import Bank. This is AfriBEC. This is more than a diplomatic formality. It unlocks access to an $11 billion financing commitment aimed at energy, infrastructure, and crucially, small businesses. It's a move designed to bolster South Africa as a continental industrial hub and to harness the opportunities of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Navigating both these complex fronts, fixing the foundational industries at home while securing strategic advantages abroad is the mandate of the Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition. To help us unpack these issues, the committee's oversight role and the path forward, we are joined by its chairperson, Mr. Mzwandile Masina. Chair, thank you so much for making it to Parliament TV.
Thank you very much.
And of course, Chair, this is a serious matter, and of course, being part of the bank and also ensuring that the master plan for 2025 is set in motion, the committee plays a huge role in that. Now, in that regard, the committee has then heard that local content in the automotive industry remains stagnant at 40%, right? And it is said that it is below the master plan's aspirations. In your assessment, and of course, as the committee as a whole, what is the single biggest barrier preventing us from moving beyond this 40% threshold?
Look, I think the auto sector is in a serious crisis in the country. We are worried, and we have been engaging with them as a department and the portfolio committee to try and find solution beyond the numbers in the master plan. In the main, I think, we are seeing a lot of job losses in the sector, but also the import from China is having a major impact on the sector itself. And we are seeing some of the component closing down, including tires and so on. And that is worrying in the main. So we really have now made some far-reaching proposals, which we believe that if the executive implements them, working together with the industry, should be able to assist us to regain the numbers that we are talking to in terms of the auto sector. Now, we believe that the auto sector in South Africa should be saved. And the government has got a huge role to play, but the private sector too have a role to play in ensuring that this sector is saved.
Now, with that, Chair, of course, you talked that the committee, having engaged with DTIC, you have come up with certain proposals, having also engaged with stakeholders. What are some of the proposals that the committee has offered to DTIC and the industry at large?
Look, there is a package of incentives that is available to assist the sector, and we believe that it has to be consolidated and strengthened. And secondly, the issue of ensuring that we don't falter on localization is another firm proposal that has been made in ensuring that we don't just become assemblers of foreign parts and so on and so on. So the issue of localization is the second area that we are looking at. And thirdly, I think also just to deepen the issues of empowerment in this specific sector. And I think that when we're interacting with the industries, one of the issues that we've raised especially, we know that at the level of the OEMs, the 7 OEMs that we have here, we might not be able to directly, deepen issues of empowerment, yes. But with regard to components and other, supporting areas, we believe that it is possible that we can strengthen this particular area.
Now, Chair, of course, you've touched on localization and the importance of employment. Now, with that, we also have to focus on policy and incentive overhaul, right? And this is something that the industry stakeholders have argued that maybe the restructuring of tax and the incentive systems to favor domestic production over foreign production should be something that should be looked at. Does the committee then agree with the current policy framework, inadvertently, which punishes local manufacturers? And what are the key principles that should guide this necessary overhaul that stakeholders are so calling for?
Look, as a country, we cannot afford to be stagnant in our policy positions, especially when there are changes overall in the industry. I think that the introduction of the Chinese import is really bringing a new challenge. So it means that we'll have to review this, the sorts of policies as well as the impact without coming across to be attacking China itself, but just trying to make sure that we can strike the balance between our own auto sector here in the country, because we play a very important role in exporting some of the vehicles to some of the major economies. So it is important, therefore, that we sustain this sector so that we can sustain the jobs, but also we can deepen localization.
And Chair, of course, when we speak about leveraging public procurement, you've personally highlighted that using public procurement like government vehicle fleets to support local production and black entrepreneurs is very important. Now, can you give us a concrete example then of how that would practically work and how it would work in terms of what we'd see on the ground? And is the committee proposing, for instance, binding targets for percentage of public fleet vehicles that must be locally manufactured or serviced by black-owned enterprises?
Look, those are some of the considerations that are before us, and we do believe that it is government should take a lead in ensuring that, for instance, if you look at the police, you look at the army, you look at the municipalities, and so on and so on. Government, we buy like huge amount of cars across, but there is no sense of understanding of or reaffirming our policy position. We just go out on tender, we buy without due consideration. So we are saying that it would be important that, from buses to vehicles to other equipments that are bought by the state, there has to be some deliberate consideration on how the state can use its financial muscles to boost the auto sector and the related industries within the space.
And Chair, of course, when it comes to electric vehicle transition, the President has on many occasions during his SONA addresses said that there is a focus on that and that there will be electrical vehicles. Of course, then some of the members ridiculed that. At the time we still had load shedding, and people made the practical example of how would you then be able to charge your car, right? Now that we do not have load shedding, and now that those issues are sort of have been put to bed, and looking at the electrical vehicle transition, the global shift is that there is now a huge use for electric vehicles, and this presents both a massive disruption and an opportunity, right, for a reset. Now, is the committee then concerned that South Africa is moving too slowly in terms of dedicating themselves to the electric vehicle strategy, risking the entire automotive ecosystem?
Look, to completely overhaul the combustion engine into EV is going to take a bit of time. And there is also a lot of consideration because you'll also have to build the related infrastructure. For instance, all over the country, we've got quite a number of petrol filling stations, which will have to be either combined or mixed use, to be transformed into mixed use in order to allow that kind of strategy to come through, because the EVs will need that kind of infrastructure, even amongst the freeways and so on and so on. Obviously, I think we are glad as a country that we've come out of load shedding. We have access energy, which should help us to consolidate under other industries like the smelters, where we can make electricity cheaper for those high energy users in the country. Yes. But we believe that the EV, where there are some proposals that are already on the table. Huge firms like PYT is already agreed to come to the country. And the discussion now is whether they are settling in Tshwane automotive sector or in Guha, so which I think that is going to really begin to have an impact. But if you go out in urban cities like here in Cape Town, in Durban and in Johannesburg, already there are some stations that are there in the malls, and then we're beginning to see some of the few car manufacturers releasing some of the EV cars. So there is already some EV cars here. Even the pace, it's a bit slower for now. But I believe that once there is a manufacturer on site here, and also there's infrastructure requirement there, so that if you want to drive between here and Joburg with the EV car, you can't not have sufficient charging stations. But also we have to improve on efficiencies, because you can imagine, we've got a number of cars on the road here. So if you have to do a complete conversion in a short period of time, we are going to have a crisis. And I think that we've got to strike the balance between the two.
And Chairperson, is the committee concerned about the ensuring that the DTIC strikes that balance, that it ensures that during this transformation period, that you talked about the petrol system that we still have, those fueling systems that we still have, and all these cars that are still produced that use fuel and diesel. Is the committee ensuring that the DTIC ensures that there's a smooth transition, and that people that are employed and do have the skill sets in the fueling system industry, in the automotive industry that uses petrol, for example, and diesel, that they do not lose their jobs?
Look, we have to strike the balance, because as a country we cannot afford to be left behind. But secondly, whatever changes that we make, we have to look at what are the opportunities. What does it mean for jobs in the country? Because certainly, if you've seen some of the stations where you charge the EV, literally you don't need anybody. In the fuel station, you need quite a number of people to be doing all sorts of work, including refueling your car. So we've got to strike the balance so that we can ensure that these changes, which are necessary, are also counterbalanced by the fact that we don't lose massive jobs, especially the unskilled and semi-skilled labor. And then obviously we'll need to have a plan in terms of what do you do with that kind of labor force that is active in the space. what role can they play in the building of the infrastructure and other works, so that we do not just convert and at the expense of the economy, because it means there will be no people who will buy the EV when people are not working.
And of course, that then that feeds into the localization issue that you spoke about earlier as well.
Of course.
Now, with that, Chair, you noted that many challenges cut across not just the DTIC, but you have to also involve National Treasury and Transport. How will the committee then, in that report that the committee has, ensure that these departments also move beyond the silos and work on this as a single problem that is facing all three departments?
Look, we are having a lot of joint meetings with Transport, with National Treasury, because there are a range of issues that requires interdepartmental interaction. And we've encouraged the executive to also regularly meet and resolve some of the problems. For instance, if you're dealing with the SCZ, there are a lot of tax challenges. I was talking to the Minister of Finance a day or so ago about some of the problems we've experienced in the SCZ here in Cape Town. He was lamenting, but also very firm in terms of what do we think needs to be the consideration of government with regard to taxes and how we treat this SCZ in order for us to ensure that they can become the point of growth for the country.
Now, earlier, Chair, in our introduction, we did mention that we're now members of the African Bank. Now, with that, we're talking $11 billion, right, that now we have access to as a country. But how does the committee then ensure, how will you guys ensure that you exercise proper oversight over how the money is being spent, and to ensure that the figure is not just a headline, but it works on the ground?
Look, the Portfolio Committee plays a major role in the African Bank. As you know, that in terms of Section 213, subsection 2 of the Constitution, we had a huge role to play where we took, as a Portfolio Committee, we took a full report with recommendations to Parliament. And then the Parliament, both houses accepted the bank, which is why on the 4th, I attended together with the Minister and the President the signing of the agreement, the accession into the agreement. This is very important for the country. So we did, even in our statement here in Parliament after the signing, indicated that Parliament will be taking a closer look in terms of how will the $8 billion US dollars going to be utilized. And the $3 billion is targeted for Empowerment Transformation Fund, how will it be utilized? So we are going to be looking at reports because you know that we play an oversight, the executive implements. We want to make sure that there is no cent that is spent recklessly and there's no accountability for it. So that's the role of Parliament.
And so this means that there'll be regular reporting to the committee and ensuring that each and every cent is spent accordingly.
Yes.
And then with that, Chair, and of course you did mention that there is a split in the funding, that you have the $8 million large-scale industrial program, and then there is the $3 billion inclusive SME program. How can the committee then ensure the inclusive growth portion isn't overshadowed by the large-scale projects? And what specific safeguards or reporting requirements will you then recommend?
Look, obviously, it's still the early days, and I must say that I remember that South Africa has been participating in the African Bank through ECIC as well as PIC as a Schedule B. We now have converted to Schedule A, which is very important for sovereignty of the country, and we are going to do everything possible on our side to make sure that we monitor the work of the department and the bank in terms of the agreement. And we also regularly brief Parliament and the people of South Africa in terms of how those resources are being allocated and spent. And I must just hasten to say that this is not a free money. This is a facility which must assist us to expand our economic development and ensure growth. So it will be very important that we fund bankable large-scale project, we fund critical empowerment projects through the Transformation Fund and all that. So it will be our responsibility to ensure that we follow up and we ask the department critical questions so that we can take the country into confidence.
And of course, Chair, one can appreciate that South Africa, as a sovereign country, does not operate alone or in isolation, right? We have the continent, we have the rest of the world. Now, with that, how can this bank membership and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement be directly leveraged to address the very localization challenges that you mentioned earlier in the automotive industry? And for instance, can it also help South Africa and the South African component manufacturers become suppliers to vehicle plants across Africa?
Well, if there's a vision like that coming from the private sector, surely they will have the support of government and the Afrexim Bank. You know, this is not just for South Africa, this is for the continent. All countries were one of the last countries to have signed this particular agreement because in terms of the Africa Continental Free Trade area, it's important that we basically focus on what the department calls a butterfly strategy, which focuses on Africa as a market. As you know, that we have as an African continent, we have a population of about 1.4 billion, which basically it's a market on its own. So it will be a misnomer for us to run everywhere else except here in Africa. So if opportunities to consolidate the component manufacturing for the continent, as you put it, I think that it's something that can be welcomed, including ensuring that we are not just an assembly point for these things, but also we can manufacture the car from Africa. Probably South Africa must take a lead in that specific area, and I know that there has been some research prototype which can ultimately help us to produce our own car beyond just components and localization and moving forward.
And of course, Chair, when we look at the bigger picture of this membership, we look at the bigger picture in terms of the continent and the world as well. You mentioned that the partnership shows strong confidence in South Africa's economic potential. Yet, Chair, domestically, we see key industries struggling to meet their own targets, right? How do you reconcile this international vote of confidence with the persistent domestic implementation gaps your committee continuously identifies?
Look, it's a reality on the ground that our economy is not growing at a level in which we expect. As a result, we've been shedding a lot of jobs. There is some clawbacks that we're beginning to see, but also the numbers of economic growth are projected to improve. And we can only be hopeful that those projections will be met and beyond. But for South Africa's economy to be on the growth path, it needs to grow between 3% and 5%, and this is not the case for now. So we've got to look at what is it that we can do as a country, broadly, but specifically to ensure that we ensure reindustrialization of our economy, because this is one area where we've seen major setbacks. You know, we've seen some reductions, and in that regard, I think it will be important that we work towards ensuring that we strengthen industrial development. So we're hoping that the industrial policy that is going to come before Parliament is going to be looking into all those areas such that we're able to meaningfully ensure that there's economic growth in the percentages that I've spoken about.
Yeah. And of course, Chair, you did mention that we're seeing a huge reduction when it comes to the automotive industry. We've seen plants that are being closed, and that means retrenchments. And these are some of the setbacks that you've mentioned so far. Now, given the urgency that is expressed in both of these statements, what is the single most important priority for your committee in the next 6 months?
Look, there are certain industries that will have to be, we must press a reset button. Okay. Firstly, I think the network industries, be it the rail, the ports, the energy, and all those, including water, we'll have to make sure that those industries are properly working, properly functioning to support industrial development. But secondly, all these master plans will have to be consolidated into a single industrial policy, a set of objectives. And thirdly, it will be important that some of the critical infrastructure assets like the smelters gets to be given rebates on the, or all the high energy users gets to be given rebates and or discount of energy so that they can produce. Because in our final analysis that if these factories don't open, we'll be unable to create the number of jobs that we need for the economy. So therefore it's important that as government we create an enabling environment and we give necessary support to those struggling sectors and ensuring that we are able to move forward. So if we can just do those few basic things, including not, there is a very strong noise from those who are opposed, especially to the African National Congress, on the approach of transformation and empowerment. Okay. We should not lose sight. We should foster empowerment throughout in all the things that we do in our economy in South Africa. So this is one area that we should not lose. So those four areas in the main, in my take. Yes. If we could consolidate them as government broadly, we could be able to then reshape our industrial strategy and we're able to move forward.
And lastly, Chairperson, for the South Africans that are watching this and feel like these are such technical terms, you're talking about the automotive industry, you're talking about the partnerships that have been made. Why is it important that they remain involved and they watch out for the work of the committee and what it does?
Look, the committee plays a very major important role in just reshaping the economic strategy for the country. As you know, that we have a single most important national interest in ensuring that our economy works, and then it works for the people of South Africa. So it is within the interest of South Africans to always watch the work of this committee. Just recently, the minister has concluded a groundbreaking deal with China, which will make our goods to enter the Chinese market, which is very important because for the longest of time it's been a single way. Chinese goods have been coming to the country, including simple things like textile. So we're happy that we are going to be exploring that, and China also is a very big market for us. So it will be important, therefore, that we continuously ensure that our economic strategy respond to the needs of South Africans, and South Africans also are fully aware in terms of what is the role they can play and what is their contribution beyond just sitting back and criticizing government.
Of course, meaning that they should practice active citizenship, Chairperson.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And of course, stay tuned to Parliament TV for the exclusive coverage of parliamentary proceedings here on Parliament TV, your front row seat to the National Legislature's lawmaking and oversight. Now, once again, my sincere thanks to the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Trade, Industry and Competition, Mr. Mzwandile Masina. And thank you for watching Parliament TV. And of course, you may continue engaging with us here on Parliament TV using the handle @Parliament of RSA across all social media platforms. Now, to all our viewers, stay tuned to Parliament TV on DSTV channel 408 and Parliament YouTube channel. From me and the crew, goodbye.